With all the videos I make covering the hoaxes and psyops over the years, I find it very interesting how the last three presidents, including Barack Obama, have mentioned fabricated news stories. Let's first start off with Bill Clinton, looking at page 156 of his book titled My Life. A lot of people know about this, where he states in his book, just a month before Apollo 11, astronauts Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong had their colleagues, Michael Collin, aboard spaceship Columbia, and I find it interesting, he has it in quotes, walked on the moon, beating by 5 months President Kennedy's goal of putting a man on the moon before the decade was out. The carpenter asked me if I really believe it happened. I said, sure, I saw it on television. He disagreed and said that he didn't believe it for a minute, that them television fellers could make things look real that weren't. Back then, I thought he was a crank. During my 8 years in Washington, I saw things on TV that made me wonder if he wasn't ahead of his time. So Bill Clinton is not talking about reality shows. He's not talking about soap operas. He's talking about specific events that were basically fabricated. And of course he is. And like I said, this is all about mockery. As I mentioned, during his time as president, of course, the 1996 Atlanta bombings, as I covered before, which was nothing more than a hoax, that took place in Oklahoma City with the bombing of the federal building, nothing more than a controlled demolition that basically went wrong with only half the building coming down. And I covered those two hoaxes in the past. Nobody died, nobody got hurt in Oklahoma City. I showed in the video the supposed Atlanta bombing in 1996 with the policemen rubbing blood on supposed victims. I'll include a link below this video in the description box where I have a combined video of both supposed events taking place. Again, nothing but hoaxes. The use of crisis actors in Oklahoma City with the supposed bombing of the federal building, again, like I stated. Let's take a look here at back-to-back clips with Barack Obama talking about fabricated news stories, and also, again, I'll play a clip with George Bush being questioned about fabricated news stories during a press conference.
The news that's coming off is just, these are just Washington fights. They're fabricated issues, they're fabricated issues, they're phony scandals that are generated. It's all geared towards the next election.
Mr. President, earlier this year you told us you had ordered your administration to cease and desist on payments to journalists to promote your agenda. You cited the need for ethical concerns and the need for a bright line between the press and the government. Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
There is a Justice Department opinion that says these pieces are within the law so long as they're based upon facts, not advocacy. And I expect our agencies to adhere to that ruling, to that Justice Department opinion. It's been a long-standing practice of the federal government to use these types of videos. Agricultural Department, as I understand, has been using these videos for a long period of time. The Defense Department, other departments have been doing so. It's important that they be based on the guidelines set out by the Justice Department. Now, I think it'd be helpful if local stations then disclose to their viewers if that's, that this was based upon a factual report and they chose to use it. But evidently in some cases that's not the case. So anyway.
Guarantee that's happening by including that language in the prepackaged report.
Yeah, you mean a disclosure? George W. Bush and I.
Well, some way to make sure it couldn't air without the disclosure that you believe is so vital.
Ken, I mean, there's a procedure that we're going to follow, and the local stations there's a deep concern about that, ought to tell their viewers what they're watching.
Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Better run, 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 oh.
Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me, just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There is a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say it was... You take it. Okay. My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here that we could tell. You smell anything? No. You may smell some of the fumes from a missile exhaust going off.
And strategic warm water port for a country where much of its coastline is frozen in by ice, especially during the winter months. Part of why it is so valuable to Russia to have the Crimean Peninsula as a place where its Navy can move in and out of. And on top of that, and I'll remind you again, this is a U.S. Navy destroyer, the Truxtun, that sails normally out of Norfolk, Virginia. On top of that, the Russian military at this point is blockading a number of Ukrainian naval vessels in the Crimea at their home port. There's actually scuttled at least 2 ships to keep Ukrainian Navy ships from being able to move out from there. Earlier this week, announcing that the U.S. would step up joint air patrols over the Baltic Peninsula. That's a clear sign of support to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, 4 former Soviet satellite states, all very concerned right now, Jake, about the Russian military moves into Ukraine and into the Crimean Peninsula.
Jake? Senior international correspondent Ivan Watson with some excellent on-the-water reporting. Thank you so much.
To clarify what we're seeing in this video here, I mentioned that how it was impossible for a CNN or CIA reporter to be at the scene at the next day when no one else can get there. Well, it's obvious. I should have realised that it's green screen. This guy isn't at the scene. It's all green screen. It's made out to look like he is there. You can look at it closely. It is all fake. That's why they don't move the camera around, because they're not at the scene at all. They use this in other major events like the Gulf War and other places. This is fake. This guy is not at the scene, and anyone that believes in the mainstream media is an absolute buffoon.
He was just a bundle of energy, like he was supposed to be.
I understand he used to tell his siblings that he managed a taco factory.
Yes, that he was going to split his time as an adult between managing a taco factory and being an astronaut.
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting juggling act, I'm sure.
How are you holding up? I mean,
most of the time I'm kind of numb, you know. I think about, and I think every mama out there can relate to the fact of how long it takes to create a baby, those 9 months that you watch every ultrasound and every heartbeat, and it takes 9 months to create a human being, and it takes seconds for an AR-15 to take that away from the surface of this earth. And it wasn't just my son, it was 25 other souls that left this earth that day because that weapon fell into the hands of a tormented soul. And
10 people were killed, though there is one report now saying 11 people were killed in that blast, but we know 10 members of one family. Also 2 media centers built. Whoa! Well, that was a rather large explosion. Yeah. That occurred, just look out here, I can't actually see where the impact of that was. It's actually set off a number of car alarms, but that was probably the largest explosion that we've heard just in the past, really in the past hour. There have been a number of explosions in the last hour or 2, but that one was pretty loud. We actually, the rockets continue to be fired from Gaza toward Israel. About 3 or 4 hours ago, there was actually quite a large rocket that was fired very close to, it went very close to this building where we are right now. Whoa!
Take him now, take him now, take him now. Somebody take him now. You can take him.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Such a sweet little guy.
Yeah.
All right, well, you're blessed.
Yeah.
Brian, your husband, is blessed. Anders is blessed.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian. You like Brian, huh? That's your dad. But we're happy you're here. You guys did a great job. Yeah. And I guess you got to thank the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Do you thank the Lord for that split-second decision?
I'm actually an atheist.
Oh, you are? All right, don't thank the Lord. But you made the right call.
Yeah.
We're so happy that you're happy.
No.
A nice story.
You see the balls. Yeah.
The bowling balls. All right, he's 18 months old, and he's going to have a happy, happy life.
Yeah.
All right, Rebecca, thank you.
Yes,
Thanks, Brian, too.
Yeah.
I said it many times, when it comes to national and international news stories that get 24/7 coverage, it's nothing more than propaganda, nothing more than part of the movie, this matrix that we live in. With Christina Lainanen, I'll just call her Christina Lie, because that's all she does is tell lies. Again, like I said, how they love to have a play on names. Just take a look at this clip. A lot of people talk about green screen backgrounds. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is filmed in a studio. Just take a look from the very start. Play it right now. I'm not going to play the audio, don't need to, but look at her glasses. I'm going to put pause here. Certain points you're going to see clear reflection, these square lights. This is from a green screen in a studio, just like you see here. Same exact thing. This is daytime, okay? Sun shining, sunny, summer day in Orlando, Florida. You should not see this at all. This is completely busted. They've been caught. Take a look. Definitely in a studio without a shadow of a doubt. All those people that believe in this phony, fake show, nothing more than a gun grab, propaganda. What do you have to say about this? And this is obviously green screen. This guy sold his soul to the New World Order a very long time ago. People have no shame whatsoever. You want to hear a little bit more. And also include a link to the original video that I found this on YouTube as well. Very good find. Just amazing, this world we live in. It's nothing what it seems. Just take a look here. These people have no souls. Again, take a look at the green screen, the square lighting. We want to explain this. They want to rationalize this. They want to keep calling us, conspiracy theorists. We have our tinfoil hats. At least we have a brain in our head. We have critical thinking, which you don't have. You think everything you're told by your lying media and your leaders is truth. The whole entire life, you don't wake up. You'll be deceived from the crib all the way to the coffin. Never too late to wake up. But your pride and ego is preventing you from doing that. Admitting you were wrong. Not a very pleasant thing in this world full of deception and lies. Very hard to backtrack once you're down a path of lies in this matrix. Again, it's very hard to turn around and say, you know what? I've been had. Nobody likes to admit they've been lied to. That's what it all comes down to. Now just see what's all going to take place. For those that awaken, all the videos that not only I've made, but many others have made as well. You're going to rethink what you believe is real. And realize what we see on TV is nothing more than a movie. It's bringing us in a certain direction. And that direction is a new world order.
I spend so much time believing all the lies.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to on executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole News and Public Affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
The world judged the Iraqi regime was a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical and biological weapons, and abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait, required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical biological weapons, and to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply. Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must be addressed. It is inherently dangerous
to allow a country such as
Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
That's right. If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other world states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons, these most deadly of weapons, to systematically defy international resolutions, and that the world will do nothing to stop them. That is the ultimate nightmare, which the world must take decisive and effective steps to prevent.
And effective steps to prevent. Possession of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons by terrorists
would constitute a direct, undeniable, and lethal threat including to Canada and its people.
The world has tried other means for years, but so far to no avail. We cannot walk away from the threat that Iraq's continued possession of weapons of mass destruction constitutes to its region and to the wider world. In the final analysis, Mr. Speaker, the absolute conviction of the government is that disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world and is therefore manifestly in the national interest of Australia.
In the final analysis, disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world, to the collective interests of our historic allies, and therefore manifestly, Mr. Speaker, it is in the national interest of this country.
CD, if you need to take cover, I notice that you've got your gas mask in your hands. If you need to put it on, please do so. If you need to take cover, please do so. If you are able to take a question, did you think that the possible threat would be over because it is now morning there? It's what, just after 6 o'clock in the morning?
The whole thing is everyone assumed that the threat would be over because it was early morning. But the thing about Saddam Hussein is that he has never done the expected, and right now we have, once again been surprised with the unexpected, an air raid, an apparent attack, although we can't say what the outgoing missiles hit, at approximately 20 after 7 in the morning Saudi Arabian time. All the other attacks have occurred from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. This is the first one to take place in eastern Saudi Arabia during the daylight hours. Now that sound you hear behind me is the hotel. Richard Thicker. It's not the national. By afternoon. So people are looking up in the skies, scanning the skies to see what they can see. Do we see much of anything out there? Can we see much of anything? Okay. Well, apparently there was some word of outgoing. Again, we cannot be specific about the direction. All right, we are now led to understand that there are also firings in another city in Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me. He just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There's a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud, a white say. My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here, that we could tell. You smell anything? No. You may smell some of the fumes from a missile exhaust going off. The missiles use a rocket of cordite, some sort of burning. We just heard a little thump just then. But
I have to apologize for that. I caught a whiff of something and felt momentarily dizzy. You're more experienced, military experience than I am, but it might have been a little gas from the rocket exhaust. It wasn't anything. A lot of people have their respirators on just in case.
And again, you run to get down here. You, in my case, jumped out of bed, hearing the air raid warning go on. You run down 3 flights of stairs to get out of here. It's probably 100 yards. You hyperventilate a little bit. You're nervous.
One thing we have to point out, just so people won't think people are panicking. Most people are in their shelters. They've taken cover in their shelters. And in the time we've been in Saudi Arabia, I've not seen any evidence of panic in the streets or people running around. People are not exactly taking this as a matter of course. There's no wholesale
Je suis une journaliste américaine.
This is a Scud. You can tell it by its distinctive label. Now, when the missile is launched, the first thing you look for is the plume sticking out behind it. Now, when you detect this, you can tell it's been launched. Thank you. Geopolitics by Dan Quayle. I'm going to go get my hamburger and my coffee. All clear. Every time I order something, this happens. All clear. Thank you. Oh, I love this country so much. I'm starting to get real bothered by all this. Charles Jacobs, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia. No, wait a minute. Whoa, hold it, homeboy. I'm the talent here. Dig.